Good morning everyone. Here we are in November and the first week of a new set. We have shorter daylight now, days, so I hope your painting is helping you to pass your time in an enjoyable way. And so this week and this month we're going to work on shadows, shine and transparency. I'm today going to demonstrate shine on some onions. I love the colour of onions and they have a lovely soft shine which I will try to show. If you paint something like this, you need to set it up so that you can actually make sure that you've got some shine showing on your subject, which I have in front of me. I've also put a couple of onions there that you can hopefully see for the colour and so on. But if you actually do paint an onion, you need to peel off the outer layer, not necessarily with a brown one, depending on how much shine you can see. But I quite like the colour of the outer skin on the brown ones, but with the red ones there's a lot more shine and brightness of colour underneath the first couple of layers of, and they're no two the same, but the one I've got over there that I'm going to paint is slightly darker actually. So these are my colours which I have out ready, and you can see that, and I'll also, after I've done this, show you some other things that you might like to paint if you don't want to go for an onion. Right, I'm going to start with the brown one. I'm going to use my round brush. Various ways of painting these to get the shine and the detail and the shadows. I have painted them in a more formal way, but with this one, and because I don't have so much time, I'm going to paint it in a quicker way and a more informal way. Okay, so starting off with the brown one, I'm going to actually put a little light wash here and there of the raw sienna down where I feel I need some real bright light showing through, and not wait for it to dry, but to go straight in, wet on wet, with other colours, and letting these colours blend and build. Working in the direction that I see those markings. I have some shine here right on the top of my onion and some more shine here, but I've just brought the light colour down a little bit so that it isn't going straight back to white paper. I think on that one I prefer it, it's not the light isn't completely obliterating the shine, so I'm actually just lifting back with a damp brush to get my shiny area. Okay, now I'm going to carry on with the quinacridone gold, working in the direction. So I won't be putting every detail in on these onions today, but just indicating what I see in them and painting them not necessarily that loosely, but certainly not in a botanical way. But I can show you some I did earlier painting them in that, using that method. Right, so now we need to start warming it up a bit. So I've got some burnt sienna here, and if I put a little bit of alizarin with that, I'm going to get some a lovely warm mix. There's a lot of brightness in this brown onion, but also using these transparent colours, I'm allowing some of that to show through at the same time. So I'm going to try and touch it as little as possible, keeping my shiny area. Indicating that sort of veining that you get, and in fact some of that veining is going very lightly through the shadow area, which is bringing it and keeping it all nicely together. Quite red down there, so that's some alizarin going in. Quite dark underneath here where there's shadow. And I think that's all I need to do to my brown onion for the moment. I'll let it dry and see what happens. If I need to fix it up, I can. I quite like the shiny area, it's looking quite natural. But there's a little bit of depth here. So while it's damp, I'll just drop that in and let it move into that brown area. It's quite dark there. Always it's going to dry up lighter than when we see it. So it's got quite a warm stalk area here. So I've got a little bit of Indian red. And while I've got that on my brush, I'm going to actually pop a bit more back down there of that Indian red. It's a lovely colour. So again, I'm not being particularly fussy with this painting. But there are shadows to be seen in this little area particularly, where it's got some folds in there and underneath. So it turns a bit sort of greeny grey towards the end of that stalk. Alright, I think I can leave that for now and see how that dries up. There aren't very many little roots and things on the brown one, but I have got more on the red one, so I'll have to try and think of a nice way of portraying those. Right, so I'm moving on to the red one, and I see in there some nice red underneath the darker purpley colour. So I've actually got some quinacridone red here. This is my red mix for the red onion. So I'm looking first to where I've got shine so that I can avoid that. There's some red there. Just a little patch of it. So I've actually got shine at the top and shine through the centre here. But again, I don't see it going back to white paper, so I'm mingling this nice red pinky colour and washing that away there so that there's a slight tint to the shine. Okay, I've got to make sure I reserve that all the way through. Right, so go again with that. And then it turns darker. And it's got some of its outer skin left, so I've complicated it for myself there really, but hopefully I'll be able to portray that okay. So it's really quite purple and dark this side, so I'm working quite wet and just dropping in this deeper purple colour with carmine, okay, and a little bit of alizarin there. So because my shine has ended up in the centre of my, here, in the centre of my onion, I have to go dark both sides. Which is no bad thing because it will actually help. I've gone in now with a little bit of French ultramarine in with my carmine mix while that's still wet. Making it very dark behind the skin, that's the outer skin here, which is a different tone altogether. But it's quite good having my shiny area in many ways. I sometimes like it to be at the side, but that isn't how the light has fallen today, so coming in from my window. Trying to keep my shiny edge here soft by dampening it with touching it with a damp brush, so that I can. You've got to try and keep a very smooth edge with something like this also. So I'll try not to touch this area at the moment where the skin, where I've got to change tones. So I'll go up to where the stalk is, which is very dark this side. I'm turning a bit redder. Yeah. So I'm varying the tones, which is going to make it interesting, make a nice interesting picture to look at. So there's shine on there, but not totally. There's some shadow coming back down as well. So I don't think I need to touch my shiny area very much more. I think that looks all right. It's taking on a similar look to what I can see on the onion. So keep a good eye all the time on your subject, and try to keep your head in one position, because if you're creating something like shine and shadow, every time you move your head, the shadow and shine is going to move. So beware. Try and sit in one position, at least till you've portrayed it and made up your mind where the shadows and shine is going to sit in your picture, and then stick with that. Right, that stalk comes down in front here, but try not to touch that too much because it's wet around it. Now we've got some bits of shadow in in that stalk as well. In fact, I made this stalk up because my onion is like that one, without any stalk at all much. So I thought I'd create my own, just to keep an interesting picture. Okay, but it is going to be lighter. Right, now I can think about putting in this outer piece of skin, which is very flat and not such a pretty colour. It's I'm using Indian red for that, and I'm trying to keep the very edge of that torn area quite light and white, even not necessarily everywhere, but more or less along there, where there's going to be light shining on there and depth behind. That's going to make it look as if it's sitting slightly proud of the onion underneath. Right, it gets dark at the bottom here, so I don't have to worry too much about that. Putting a little bit of warmth in as well, a little bit of alizarin here going on, just to cheer that flatness up. Coming back down this side, trying to keep my onion lovely and smooth on the outer edge. Right, that doesn't look too bad. My stalk's gone a little bit flat, so while that's still wet, I'm just going to drop a bit more life into that. A little bit of blue into the Indian red, just to give it some depth under here where there's going to be shadow. And then it gets very dark where the little roots are coming. Not quite in the centre, but sitting a little bit on her. There we go, just some depth there. And I'm going to have to put the shadows in before I paint in the these little things, and they can be a brown colour, the little roots. So I'm going to leave that for the minute. And I've only got about another 10 minutes or so left, and I've got to deal with the shadows. So what I'm going to do is stop and then start, because I want to paint this little piece of skin. There's some skin that I want to, just a little piece of skin to make the picture interesting down here, and it's really transparent, so I might just paint that in and then I can work on the shadows. I've mixed some shadow colours, and now I'm going to try to see my shadows really carefully and put them in as I see them. I don't always do that. I sometimes do what I feel I prefer to do, which is just wash colour underneath, but today I'm actually going to have a good look at the shadows and see if I can paint them as I see them. So I like to have a very watery mix of something similar to the subject that I've just painted, and I try not to touch my shadows too much because I really don't want them to overtake. So I've mixed a little bit of the carmine with a little bit of the Indian red, and a little touch of the ultramarine blue. And my shadow is, I don't know if you can see the shadows on here, but they are taking on quite a perfect half circular shape on those onions, and so I'm just going to go for that now. And then just wash it in. I didn't wet it first because I might not have got a very smooth edge to my shadow. But now what I'm seeing is some light in my shadow. So with a dry brush, I'm actually going to take a little bit of that out, and I can actually see it pulling the shape down that way. And there's also a little bit of light here. I've got two windows, one each side of my onions, so there's light coming from both sides. So, and what's happening here is, because I haven't put the little roots in yet, I'm getting some little shadows for the roots as well here. So I'm just mixing it up a little bit here now, just to show the few shadows of those little roots that are going to go in when that area there is dry. Could be, I think, slightly deeper under here. But that's all I'm going to do. And then I see a shadow that has a slightly different tone. So again, I've taken the tones of the brown onion, and I don't see all that much shadow there. It's taking on that shape. And so I took the raw sienna, put a little bit of the Indian red with that, and again a little bit of the blue, but it's casting some shadow from this stalk coming round here like that. Softening it a little bit and bringing a little bit of light back in, but touching it as little as possible. Again, it's a little bit mixed up here, so I'm taking a little away, but again touching it little, but more depth just under here where it's sitting on the table. Now, my little piece of onion skin has got quite a deep shadow here, taking on a strange shape. I don't really understand shadows and shine. They elude me a lot of the time. I don't know quite how they work. So there's some shadow there, and it's got weaker, so a bit more water with it. It gets weaker and comes out, creating further shadow out this way. I don't really like the hard edges that have appeared on those shadows. It's not my favourite type of thing, but had to show it. And then there is a bit more shadow coming around here. Don't know from quite whether it's sort of showing some shadow from each and shadow from each window, I suppose. But if the edge of your shadows have just gone a little bit hard and you actually are not that keen on what you see, just take a little piece of your sponge, wet it make it so that it's only just damp, and then maybe just take a little edge away, just soften it. I think that's much nicer, so that they mingle a little bit there. And I think that looks much more natural. I don't really like the hard edges that appear, but then that's what you see, and so sometimes that's what people like to do. The other thing I've done is to give it it's got to stand on something. It's an inanimate object, and so that it always has to stand on something. So what I've done is taken my ruler and measured 4 inches down from both sides, drawn a very light line through to create just the indication of an edge of the table. And so a little bit of shadow maybe there, just to show that it's standing on something. Otherwise it's going to be floating, and that really doesn't look right. And that's all you have to do, really, just to indicate the fact that it's standing on some surface. Okay, so that's my onion, but when it reaches this point, and if that's dry, which it isn't quite, but hopefully it will be okay still, I can take my sword brush and mix up a little browny pinky colour and put in a few of these little roots. I do actually see them lighter than this, but lighter isn't going to really work very well, so I'm using some artistic license here. Changing the tones a little bit with some of the other colours that I've used. So as many or as few as you wish. Did the thing with the brush again. So make sure you don't let that brush get all wet at the ferrule. There we are, and a few on here. I don't see many on that one, but I think it ought to have some. Just indicate a few on that one. And actually, I've put a little bit of a blemish on that onion. I felt it was looking just a little bit too boring, so I cheered it up. So at this stage you can then go in and create some little marks into your onion if you wish, just a few little veins. I'm not going to touch that because I quite like it as it is, and really this wasn't supposed to be a particularly perfect one. This was meant to be one that you can paint nice and quickly and loosely, and without getting too bogged down with lots of layering and taking a long time over it. But if that's the way you want to paint, then that's fine, please do. But that's it. That's all I need to really show you, I think. With the soft shine, there are lots of different types of shine, and we can cover those as the month goes on, and I'll show you 1 or 2 more things that I have actually completed. Right, this is my dried painting now. I've allowed it to dry and come back to show you what it looks like when it's actually dried up, and the shine is still fairly sort of prominent and working quite well. So wait until your picture is dry before you touch it up or do anything more to the shine, because I think you'll find it will actually dry up well. If you want to create something a little bit more detailed and more of a botanical study, then go for something that's on a smoother paper, and so that you can get the detail. And with this one I just layered up the colours, but what you have to do each time is to allow each layer to dry, so it is quite time consuming, it is quite tedious, but you get a different kind of result, and one that I know some people really like. So if that's something that you would like to do, that's fine. Botanical studies, generally speaking, don't have any shadows showing, so they look as though they're floating and are usually just left on white paper. But if you want to put shadows on, I wouldn't stop you. And some people may want to stay with the leaves. If that's the case, then you can maybe continue with them and pop them in a little vessel of some description. And this one has a bit of soft shine on it, and I've been looser with the shadows, so that's a sort of shadow I like in a picture like this, because it doesn't then take over from the actual subject. But some leaves and berries in a pot would always make a lovely autumn type picture. Okay, so that's another idea. I show you lots of things because I've got people at different levels and people who like painting in different ways and of different styles, so I hope I'm giving you something that you'll all like. Grapes have quite a soft bloom to them, a soft shine, and that one is built up similarly to the study of the onion. So this would end up being something of a study too. Lots and lots of layers on there, very light layers, one after the other, allowing each one to dry and creating different tones and depths of colour there. Figs have a nice soft bloom to them, not much of a shine at all because they're quite sort of opaque looking, but a nice challenge and a beautiful colour, lots of lovely colours in figs, so have a go maybe at something like that. Other vegetables and fruit will have shine. A banana doesn't have a lot of shine, but it has a bit. Apples have a lot of shine, things like aubergines do, so on and so forth. So again, lift off as you go and leave it right until the end before you put the dry brushwork to make the markings on the apples, and they become quite realistic. Okay. If you're a loose painter and you want to do something loose, and again using a vessel, perhaps some berries or something in a vessel, you can still create shine and shadows painting loosely. So maybe that's a nice challenge for those that would like to paint in a loose way. Sometimes I give myself a quick sketch first with something like the Tombow pen, and just to show me where I want to put all the shine, and then it sits there and I stick with what I see on my sketch rather than allowing the shine to move around because I'm moving or the light changes or whatever. If it's something that you want to capture and show the shine and the light really well, a good sketch first would always help you. Okay, so I think that's it. I hope you choose something nice to paint this week and enjoy your week painting soft shine. Next week I think I'll do something maybe showing some sharper shine, and then we'll go on to transparency, and then maybe some shadows later on the month on buildings and things. So lots to do. Have a good week, and I look forward to being with you again next Monday. Take care. Bye bye.